You are listening to the Will Power Podcast. Welcome to the show. I am Will Holdren, and I talk with some of the most influential CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, and thought leaders to reveal the secrets that have led to their success. I believe that with the right knowledge and mindset, you can do anything you say your mind to. So if you want to learn how to change your life for the better, if you want to learn how millionaires actually became wealthy, or if you want to develop and start your own business from the ground up with the right knowledge to help you, then you are in the right place because this is the Willpower Podcast. How's it going, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I am the host of the Willpower Podcast. Today we have an incredible entrepreneur, and his name is Thomas Wilkinson. And Thomas is actually a managing partner at a company called Ollin Ventures. He graduated from BYU with a degree in mechanical engineering, so has somewhat of a different background, but still ended up as an entrepreneur, which is super cool to see. On top of that, he's built and managed several sales teams to high levels. And like I mentioned, now he's in the venture capital world and also the real estate world. And he and his company have invested in over 25 different startups, which is absolutely incredible. They're out there funding a lot of dreams. It's really cool to see. So with that being said, Thomas, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will. And by the way, I like the name of your podcast.
My pleasure.
Willpower, that's sick.
Yeah, try to be as creative as possible.
Yeah. What did you say?
Try to be as creative as possible with the name. So appreciate
there you go.
There you go. Appreciate that. But yeah, so starting out, I want to ask you a question I pretty much ask all my podcast guests, which is one, what makes you want to take time out of your busy day to hop on podcasts like these to really go out there and just share your story for people that want to listen to it?
Entrepreneurship is it's a family, you know. You're different if you want to be an entrepreneur, and I think in other industries and other parts of life, like, there's this feeling of like competitiveness, and I've never been a part of a group that's more giving and willing to spend their time with other people because it's so raw and real to be an entrepreneur. I think it connects people in a really cool way and makes you want to give back and help other people that are about to embark on that journey, because it's going to be lots of ups and lots of downs. And anyway, so I just feel like everyone that's listening to this wants to be, an entrepreneur. They're part of my family, and I want to help them out.
That's a great perspective to have. And to your point, it's not really me versus you out here. And entrepreneurship, like you said, it's kind of having that perspective, that mind of abundance. And it's how can we both win at the end of the day? And so when people can come on podcasts and really just share their knowledge, share their expertise, especially someone like you who has so much expertise, kind of just funding businesses, seeing startups happen, knowing where to go with that, I think that is so valuable for people that, want to get started, not quite sure how to get started, but they know they want to go into entrepreneurship. But again, it's hard to go from 0 to 1, right? But when they can listen to people like you, their experiences, makes things a lot easier. So appreciate you popping on here for this. Yeah, so you have a pretty unique background. You have a mechanical engineering degree from BYU, obviously. And again, people like technically going to like engineering and things like that, they really are like a different kind of brain people where they're more analytical than your normal entrepreneurs, right? So I'm kind of curious how your story kind of evolved and how did you go from being an engineer major to jumping into entrepreneurship to begin with?
Good question. So originally it started out because I don't love to write, and I'm really good at math and just have always been gifted at math. So I thought it'd be the fastest and easiest major for me to do. I was very wrong. It was a really hard major, but I always thought at some point I was going to be an entrepreneur. But when my deliberate strategy was, way later in life to be an entrepreneur after I'd gone to business school and worked for somebody else and made my mistakes with their money and then started my own business after that. Right. When I was 40. That was the plan. I had a cousin that was a role model to me that had done electrical engineering and then gone into venture capital and then, eventually became the CEO of a business. And I thought that was a cool path. And I wanted to set myself apart from all the other business people that I, was in school with. And I thought having those hard skills would be important for me. So I went for it, and this was, yeah, it was kind of a wild time in my life. I just got back from a church mission in Brazil for a couple of years, and before that, I was at the Air Force Academy. So I transferred to a new school, and my brother got into Harvard, and my parents came to me and they said, "Hey, you know what? We don't have any money to pay for you to go to school. Your brother is going to Harvard, and then you left your scholarship at the Air Force Academy, so you're on your own." And that was kind of a tough time for me. But the best thing that ever happened, because it forced me to get into sales in the summertime to help me pay for school and also pay for a tutor so I could like get the grades that I needed to get. And I wasn't smart enough necessarily to work during school and get the grades I wanted. But ultimately, I ended up taking a class from an entrepreneurship professor, and by a stroke of luck, was dating a girl that was best friends with his daughter, and we went to a party at their house down in a city called St. George, and it was the biggest house I'd ever seen. And I go down in the basement, there's a bowling alley in there, and then all of a sudden my professor comes down the stairs, and I'm like, "Oh, I know this guy. He teaches entrepreneurship." And I told him my whole life plan that I was going to go to business school and all this stuff. And when I was 40, start my own business, and he told me that was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard. And like, well, okay,
Right.
that's new from the professor. And eventually got into talking. He's like, "Dude, you have this money saved from doing sales in the summer. Let's just start businesses now. Why wait until you're 40 to go and make this happen?" Entrepreneurship is a learned muscle. It's a learned skill. And you just need to go for it. So that's how I got into it and how I stayed in engineering. I'm a finisher. I encourage people to finish school. It's not the right thing for everybody, but
Yeah.
I met my wife because of that, and I made commitments to my in-laws that I was going to finish. Um, so I eventually finished, but that's how I got into entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
Long
that's
story short.
That's incredible. And to your point, I love, your whole background, how you got into it. And I also agree. I think college can definitely bring a lot of benefits, right? Even finishing it, like you said, you never know who you're going to meet, relationships you can build, connections you can build. So that's so important from that perspective. But man, that's inspiring. So your brother went to Harvard. You were at the Air Force Academy, which again is a crazy hard prestigious school to get into just to begin with. And so
Yeah.
then you decide to leave that to go to BYU, right, in order to also help pursue like your business entrepreneurship dreams. I mean, that to me seems like just a very scary jump to make. I know there's a lot of kids out there as well where they solely make decisions on colleges based on like their degrees that they want to go and the degrees they want to do. And they choose that degree mainly because of what their parents want for them in their life. It's kind of a difficult perspective for a young kid to make jumping into that,
My
right?
parents were not pumped about me leaving Air
Yeah.
Force Academy.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to ask you, like, talk me through that moment. What was that conversation like with your parents? And obviously it was scary, but I think deep down you knew that you wanted to go towards business and owning your own business, which meant that the best plan to do that was to go to BYU, right? And to switch that up and lead a
Yeah.
scholarship, all that kind of stuff.
My mom was disappointed in me, you know,
Yeah.
like there's no other way to put it. Like, so I was on one of the teams there. I was a gymnast, competitive gymnast. So, trained for the Olympics my whole life. My mom put time and energy and resources into that.
Oh, wow.
And, I only did a year before I did the church mission, and we had success. We, won championships, and stuff. And so I think she was sad to see that part of my life kind of move on. But ultimately, I had to do what was the best for me. And yeah, you got to not be afraid to do that. And I know that it's scary sometimes, and you want your parents to be proud of you and everything like that. It's kind of come full circle because now they're so glad that I made the decision, because I'm doing what I truly love to do.
Right.
I eventually got to the point where and I think if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have this feeling, but I just didn't want to be owned by anybody. And I feel like working for somebody else, they own me. Being in the military, the government owns me. I don't want, I mean, yeah, one life. Why in the world would I do that? Why would I settle when I can um my own life? And that feeling of and confidence that I had in myself was more powerful than the feeling of not wanting to disappoint my parents. And so ultimately I just kind of ripped the band-aid off, and it was tough for a while and they worried about me, but I'm better for it.
That's amazing. And to your point, I mean, you know what's best for you at the end of the day, and sometimes it doesn't align with what your parents want for you, right? So again, it's just a very hard jump for people to make. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it worked out extremely well for you. You met your wife at the different college, right? So a lot of things kind of panned out. And I always talk about this
That's right.
too. God knows the ultimate plan for you. So you just gotta have faith in His plan and trust where He's going to lead you, which obviously you did, which is super cool to see. So walk me through after that conversation with your professor downstairs in basement. He said, "That's a dumb idea. Don't wait till 40. Get started in business now." Is that when you first got started, leaning towards the venture capital arena, or what was that first business that you started
Yeah,
and going from there?
we all right away. So we got back to semester, and at BYU, we have what's called the Tech Transfer Office, which is a bunch of different patents and from professors that are developing new technologies and new stuff. And you can go in there and look at all of them and figure out if there's one in there that you want to test an idea on and see if you can build a business around it. And but to be honest, a lot of them just will never be able to commercialize. But there's at the same time great technologies in there that need to exist that aren't out there because professors they're not wired that way to go commercialize a business. They've got tenure at their university. They just want to do the research. So um, basically, the first one that I did was a technology for deaf students, and we had some deaf students in the classroom, and I remember having them and wondering how in the world they could, succeed in the classroom if they're looking at an interpreter next to them and having to see the professor at the same time. You just can't see two places at once, and so the professor in the classroom got a grant from the government for $700,000 to develop some smart glasses and some software that would produce a live interpretation of ASL to the glasses. And so wherever the student's looking, they're getting the ASL interpretation and whatever the professor's writing on the board. And not only that, that if I'm a deaf student and I'm taking advanced physics, there might be maybe one or two interpreters in the country that can go to that level. And so now all of a sudden I can have somebody in New York doing my interpreting for me. And it really opened up a lot. I thought, okay, this doesn't exist on a mass scale. It needs to. Um, that was my first thought. But what we teach in our fund is you also have to do validation around it. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean somebody be willing to pay for it. So I got another grant for about $5,000 to go to San Antonio, set up a booth, and we pretended like the whole business was already done. And we wanted to take orders on our product to see if people would pay for it. And we had people lining up out the door for it, Dallas ISD, UT Austin, and
Wow.
we knew we were on something. Of course, we had to come back and say, hey, we're not going to cash your check. We'll get to you as soon as we can. And then I went to BYU and we bought the patent from them for $10,000. That's all they wanted.
Wow.
And they spent 700 grand of grant money on this. And I put 50 grand in. My partner Corbin, the professor, put 50 grand in, and we're off to the races. We thought this would be a small business, but NASA's a customer, Twitch, Microsoft, Panasonic, Tesla, Universal Studios, and the company totally blew up. And you talk a little bit about God. My faith is so important to me. Looking back, it's so easy to see where I've been helped and guided through the whole process in a really meaningful way and sometimes almost like a forceful way. It was super painful, the decisions that I made and what I went through to get there. And I know that God had a hand in that, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Are you still involved with that company? Do you guys sell that, or are you still actively doing it?
I sold a portion of it. I still own about 30% of the business, and we're crushing.
That's amazing. That's what's the product called again?
Called Sign Glasses. You can look it up.
Okay, sunglasses.
Yeah, we had a video go viral recently.
That
There's
is
this little girl at Universal Studios. You know how on those rides they have the audible part of the ride? Well, if you're deaf, you just didn't have that part of the experience. And so she got put these little glasses on, and it was just super cool to see. Um, anyway, what's great about entrepreneurship is you can see all the problems in the world and just sit back and complain about them, or you can do something about it and make money at the same time. And money's not an evil thing. It's just not. It's just that it's a great measuring stick for how much value you're creating for the world. And I think the people that chase money, they end up missing the mark and a lot of times end up in jail. But people that chase value, value creation, the money starts chasing them. And that's really what we try to deliver in our fund.
Yeah, that's amazing. And obviously, I think with your mechanical engineering background as well, I think that's super helpful when it comes to actually designing products and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it turns out it has been helpful.
Yeah, it's a pretty rare combo to have that entrepreneurship ability and that engineering ability at the same time, just combining those skills. So, walk me through, when did you officially start Ollin Ventures? Was that after you kind of sold off the 30% of the sign glasses? Is that your next step was Ollin Ventures at that point?
Great question. So what we did was a series of SPVs, or special purpose vehicles. And so we just continued to invest in deal after deal after deal. So that was Ollin Ventures. That first investments, I just created an LLC that made those investments. And so we did 27 different investments after that, or 26 after that. And then our fund, which is just a collection of a bunch of SPVs into one asset, we started in January. That's called the Atom Fund. I named it after my brother that passed away about 10 years ago. And it's super exciting. The reason we started the fund is, number one, I wanted my investors to be able to have a diversification across 50 businesses. And then the timing of the market is really important. We believe that right now in venture capital is what real estate was in 2008, when everything's on sale. So, it was right after a crash. If you had money and you had the guts to go for it, you were a legend, and you didn't even have to be good at picking deals.
Right.
Right. Of course, it helps if you're good at picking deals too, which we are. And so we feel the timing's really good. So anybody has cash sitting on the sidelines, I think right now is the time that you put a little bit more of your allocation into venture, because you're going to get better deals than you would in real estate, especially if you're in Utah right now.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And to your point, I think that's kind of like the ultimate game plan for a lot of people, is that eventually, once you get enough capital, at some point you want to become the investor in these companies. And that's really when you can really make passive income and really generational wealth down the line. So walk me through, what industries are you guys mainly focusing on investing? You guys all over the place, or do you have certain criteria that goes around that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we invest in software, business to business, health technologies, and we invest in marketplace businesses.
Marketplace business.
So we're investing in 50 deals. So every single deal that we do has to be capable of a 50x. Otherwise, we shouldn't touch it. Every deal by itself. Well, so there's two rules in venture capital. Number one, your losses don't matter, which sounds crazy. And number two, every deal has to be capable of 100 or 50x. Like, it needs to be able to return the fund by itself.
Nice. Okay.
So a lot of deals that we see are deals that are great businesses that just shouldn't take venture capital money. They should grow with their own cash. Where we really need to see deals that are capable of huge returns. Because we're expecting in our fund that we're going to lose principal on about half of them, and then another 20% will get 2 to 4x, another 20% will get 5 to 9x, and we actually put all those in the loss column. And the last 10% are the ones that are going to carry the whole fund, because anything above a 10x, we count as, okay, that was a good job. We did a good job.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting model. So you guys are coming off initially thinking that 50% of these companies are just going to fail and that's lost money, right? But then the couple of companies that are going to really hit are going to hit it big, and that's going to make up for the rest of the fund and get all the investors their return. So you're
It's the
talking,
power law.
yeah. So you're talking about 50x return in the fund. I mean, if you're talking to investors, what's the potential holding period where you're kind of taking their cash and, I mean, they can't take anything out for a certain amount of time? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. It's not get rich quick. This is a 10-year thing.
Okay.
And we're projecting a 3x EPI, the distributions to paid in capital, over 10 years
Okay.
for our investors. We think we'll do better than that. Our first fund of 27, we did 4.67 on DPI and then 2.6, or sorry, 26x in value. So if you put 100 grand in with me 10 years ago, you'd have $467,000 back and then 2.6 million in value that we just haven't sold yet
That's amazing.
in the fund.
That's really amazing.
Um, but it takes time.
Yeah.
It's building businesses is hard,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's the most productive asset class because it's people like you and people watching this video. We create the economy. We are the economy. Um, and so if you put $100 into every single startup ever created, you're going to average a 22% return because we're the ones that are driving the economy.
Right. Right. That's amazing.
It's just you're going to expect that not everyone's going to succeed right away. And by the way, if you fail, that's awesome because you learned a ton and we'll bet on you again because of all the things that you learned. And doing that, most entrepreneurs have multiple failures under their belt
Yeah,
before they get going.
no doubt. It's never really success on the first go. It's usually the fifth or 10th business where they
Yeah.
finally find something that clicks and
Yeah,
that's it.
I unfortunately had the success on the first go, which is very rare, but
Yeah,
that's not common.
right. That's the anomaly right there. So I'm kind of curious, what do you guys look at, when evaluating these deals? I know you mentioned you want to see potential for a big blow up in the future. I mean, are you looking for like I think of like what Spotify is, what Airbnb is, they found ways to implement technology into these old, you know, um parts of the economy. And then when you do that mixture, there's a big blow up, right? So are you looking for just spaces like that where there's room for technology to come in, just really change the space and have room to kind of change the whole dynamic of that section of the economy? Or what do you guys look at specifically when evaluating companies, say, all right, this one we see potential in?
So I think what you're referring to is the theory of disruption.
Yeah.
Is that what you're? Yeah, we look for that type of thing. I think that's kind of that word is disruption is kind of overused quite a bit actually. But things are moving so fast right now, especially with AI. And so and we're really cautious when we're investing in AI because one release from Chat GPT could just destroy hundreds of companies in one day. And so
Yeah.
I think I think to answer that's just a hard question to answer because every day we'll see a new technology and we're like, I didn't even think about this at all ever.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if the pain is big enough, people are willing to spend money on it. And so when people are targeting big pains, that's what we're looking for. We call that the TAM, the total addressable market. So if you're targeting a massive, massive market, let's say, I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but we're really looking for a total addressable market of 100 billion a year. That way, there's multiple players that can play in the space, and there's you can make mistakes along the way. But if somebody's just investing in catnip for a specific breed of cat that we have this special technology, that's just not the business isn't big enough.
Gotcha.
And we also need to see technology that's novel, that has a moat around it. It can't be something that can be just copied right away. And technology also is an important piece to it because we can't invest in commodities because there's the margins are too small.
Yeah.
Um,
Gotcha. And how
I
do you
put
go
it
about,
in simple terms, but
I think that was pretty good, especially the catnip example. I think that was pretty good off the top of your head. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. But how do you go about finding these companies? I mean, are they approaching you guys, or are you actively going out there seeking them, or how does that process work?
No, you can't really see because it's fuzzy. But we have a building in here. We'll have over 200 startups in here. It's an incubator, and if anybody has a business that they want to
That's
take a look at, you can fill out on ihub.org. You can fill out an application and see if you get approved to come in here. You get access to free legal and free accounting, and you get a space in here with a bunch of other entrepreneurs.
that's amazing. That is so cool. So there's over 200 startups in there right now, is what you said?
Yeah, we have another building as well. So we haven't gotten the total number. I think we'll at full capacity, we could have 400 startups in here.
Gosh, that is so cool. That is awesome to see. That's pretty remarkable. Well, I guess going forward for you in Ollin Ventures, obviously you guys have done so much. You guys are invested over 25 companies right now. I mean, what does the future look like for you guys? What are you guys trying to grow to, scale to? How much money are you guys trying to bring in for the Atom Fund? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a few million left on the Atom Fund. We had a group from UBS come in yesterday, and they'd like to put us on their platform so more people can get access to the fund. And they said at minimum we need to be at 25 million. So we might extend the fund to 25 million. We've invested in 7 companies so far this year, and we'll do about 17 a year for the first 3 years, and that'll be fund 1, and we'll start fund 2 right after that.
That's amazing. That is so cool to see. And the growth too. I mean, it's just amazing. Like I said before, I think it's awesome to see companies like you just helping other entrepreneurs kind of fund their dreams, and get things really kicked off, because it's challenging to get a business kind of off the ground. So, finding someone like this can really be a game changer, going forward.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so just for respect for our time, I've got a couple more questions to ask you before we hop
Yeah.
on. But
Yeah.
but one, I mean, going forward, I know we talked about your company goals, but for you personally, what are some of your personal goals that you hope to get accomplished here in the next couple of years? What does that look like?
Well, my wife and I'd like to have 4 kids. We've got 2 so far, and 1 is due next week, another
Oh,
boy.
congrats.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's really exciting. I'm trying to lose some weight. Um,
Gotcha.
I think it's easy to focus too much on the business side. I think I got caught up in that, and I forgot about taking care of myself. And that's my number one priority now, sharpen the saw. So I'm in a competition with some friends, actually with Blake,
Okay.
and he'll lose another 10 pounds in September. And then just high level, we'd like to manage $500 million in our fund in the next 5 years. I think that would be really huge for us. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that is awesome. So my next question for you, real quick, is if I'm a young entrepreneur trying to start a business, I mean, what are the main tips that you would give to me if I'm going out there trying to pitch someone to help fund my business?
Oh, you need to learn how to sell first.
Yeah.
So if you have an opportunity to go learn from a sales company, I'd go and do that. I'd figure out how to fund it yourself too. So the reason I'm in the position I'm in is because I went out and sold, and I made a good amount of money to fund those first deals that I did. The more you can fund yourself, the better. But more important that you're going to learn a lot of skills to do that. That's what I would say. That's not the right answer for everybody, but if you don't know how to sell, you're going to really struggle as a business owner.
And to your point, I love the idea of joining a sales company, learning underneath them for a couple of years, whatever that looks like, and just really get the groundwork, the base work done, so you can kind of build your skills there. So again, appreciate you hopping on here. My last question is, before we hop off, is there anything else you would like to say? And if people want to reach out to you, how can they go about finding you?
Yeah, I reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, Thomas J. Wilkinson. And then I can send to you our application to be a part of iHub, or if you're interested in investing or just talking, I'm happy to chat with anybody. It might take me a minute to respond, but yeah, find me on social media.
Awesome. All right, guys, there you have it. Thomas Wilkinson, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, guys. Take care.